What's the last thing someone said to you before they died? My grandma told me she loved me and how I saved her life by buying her that cordless phone, 90s, because she was just laying on the bathroom floor, but she carried it with her like I told her and was able to call for help. She had crocheted a bag for it. She was in the end stages of cancer and I was driving up 4 hours every weekend to stay with her. I'd bought the phone a few weekends before and told her to take it with her. She'd never had a cordless phone, so it was a big deal for her. She religiously kept it charged and on her when she got up. She told me she'd see me that weekend. She died that night. My mother was at the end stage of leukemia. I called her to see how she was doing. She was pumped full of morphine and close to the end. She told me she loved me and we hung up the phone. My dad called not too long after and said she was near the end and I needed to get on a flight immediately. I caught the next flight out to see her before she passed away. My uncle picked me up from the airport and informed me she had died while I was on the plane. See you tomorrow. My father on the phone. I found him dead in his house the next day. Fell. Cracked his head open. Edit. It's amazing to see how people are opening up with their own stories and sharing advices and virtual hugs. Thank you, Redditors, for turning my comment into a place of comfort. You don't have to visit me every day. I'll leave hospital in 2 days anyway, my father said. I replied I'd still visit next day as I love him. In the end we both were right. Sadly, he died 25 hours after that talk, so I visited his dead body next day, and he was transported out of hospital 2 days after we talked. I think this exchange will stick forever in my mind. Be a good chap, my grandfather, ETA. For those asking, I do try to be good, to be kind and respectful to others, to give what I can when I can, to stop and help when it's needed. I'm by no means perfect, no one is, but striving to be better for others is the best any of us can do, and what he was like right up till the end. He was so loved by the community. The church at his funeral had people standing in the wings, and it had a capacity of 1,000. He actually was forced to retire as a GP by grandma at like 75, but still snuck out to see patients. He had a practice behind the house with a few doctors. My dad said I'm gonna pass out. I'm passing out, then died in my arms. Edit. Wow. Thanks for all the comments and the hugs and things. Nice surprise waking up to 100 comments. My dad had a heart attack in our apartment and we were trying to get to a hospital when he collapsed in the parking lot. I'm fine, don't worry about me. My grandfather had been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer and refused all treatment. In his words, I'm 86 years old. What the hell is the point? The last time I saw him he looked bad and was clearly in a lot of pain, but he kept insisting that he didn't want anyone making a big fuss over him. He died 3 days later. My grandpa, on the phone. I wish we could have met. He lived in New Zealand. I live in Australia. I had met him many times to warm me up inside that it had been so long since I'd visited him that he'd forgotten me. Tucked in my GF, kissed her goodnight, told her I loved her and would see her in the morning. She kissed me back, said love you babe, and she passed that night. I found her in the AM when I went to kiss her goodbye before I left for work. ETA. I am totally floored by the traction this seems to have gotten. First, thank you so much for the love, condolences, and stories that you all have shared with me. I am both in awe and honored. Second, I am getting through, one foot in front of the other. Some days are better than others. Thirdly, she died from complications from a number of things she had going on: type 1 diabetes, arthritis, fibro, congestive heart failure, and reduced kidney function. And it didn't help she spent half of Dec, pretty much all of Jan, and nearly half of February in the hospital from complications stemming from breaking her ankle, pneumonia, and an infection in her hardware for the broken ankle, so this wasn't totally out of the blue, but it still sucks. I've learned it never gets better. You just get used to the idea that they're gone. To some of the younger Redditors, don't be afraid to love deeply, honestly, openly. It's worth the pain that sometimes comes. When we go, the only things we leave behind are the stories people tell and the memories we've made. So, enough of me being maudlin. I'm gonna have another beer or two and go to bed. I want to live. I don't want to be fed and watered and turned to the sun like some kind of plant. Since this blew up, he did die. He was going in for brain surgery and the outcome was questionable. Him saying that made it a lot more possible for me to consent to withdrawing life support when it became necessary. The one that always will stick with me was when I was working on the ambulance. Got called to a home during a blizzard for a 35-year-old male seizing and foaming at the mouth. Me and my partner in a trainee I had with me go and respond, and while en route get an update that patient was now conscious and admitted to ingesting poison intentionally. Poison control and medical control call us to advise he admitted to using strychnine, a potent nerve toxin used in the old days for rodent control on farms or industrial sites primarily. We get up to the house and I start talking to him. Get N4 established, give him activated charcoal per med control, and he is completely honest with me. He tells me he took it cause he had been fighting depression and anxiety for years and work finally put him over the edge. While his girlfriend was in the shower he mixed it into his drink and chugged it and took some sleeping aids hoping he would pass in his sleep and be less traumatic for his girlfriend. He went to bed like nothing was wrong and his girlfriend came out to find him seizing on the bedroom floor. He grabbed me by the shirt and he said, "I'm so sorry. I'm sorry I did this to you." He seized again while holding my shirt and began to vomit and aspirate. He went pulseless shortly after and me and the trainee did CPR for 16 minutes. Unable to travel in the storm. That is one of many calls that will stay with me forever. I don't remember specifically, but I was telling my mom about how I was excited to finally move out and buy on my own, well, my own with roommates, and she gave some sort of no-word verbal acknowledgement. She had a stroke in her sleep later that day. My uncle was hit in the head with brass knuckles and his last words to me were, "I wasn't hit. It was just a door." 12-year-old me said that wasn't a door. You were hit, and he said, "Then why'd you ask?" We were both laughing about it and he said he was okay. He wasn't. That and my aunt I was making something for her when I was 11. I kept telling her to stay for 5 more minutes while I finished. She said I'll be back early tomorrow. She passed away that night. Thank you. As usual, it's really about time I returned the favor. My older brother had told me this countless times before. He almost always said it when he left. I responded with the usual. He was strange in the prior conversation, but because he seemed in a better mood than normal, that last goodbye, the same as always promise that had just become a formality, just felt so normal. I had no idea he'd already resolved to take his own life. He was saying goodbye for good, and I didn't even notice. My mom fell into a coma about a week before she died from lung cancer. Don't smoke, but the last time I saw her conscious, she called me by my childhood nickname and said she loved me and was proud of me. In terms of her parents' last words, it was the best thing she could have said. I still tear up when I think of it. 10 years later, the last thing my dad said to me was, "My sister is taking me to the hospital. I'm not feeling well. Tell your daughter I said I love her too and I will see you guys soon." He went into surgery and never woke up. Died 4 days later. My best friend, it was great to see you. Can't wait to hang out with you again soon. He died a few weeks later in a snowmobile accident before we could make time to get together. After he passed, I decided that if I ever had a son I would give him my friend's middle name, Aaron. Fast forward 10 years and my wife was pregnant with our first son. When she was having trouble detecting his movement, we went to the hospital and she was given an emergency C-section. We didn't realize it until later, but Aaron was born 10 years to the day that my friend passed away. Aaron was released from the NICU 8 days later, on what would have been my friend's birthday. Alright clone, talk to you later buddy. Guy I played co-duo with for a while, went by the name of Pepper, really good dude. I can't remember when, but it wasn't long after that I got a message from one of the other regulars on that server that Pepper had died, sent me a link to a news article. Apparently he had confronted some guy early in the morning for riding his dirt bike up and down the street making a lot of noise. The guy and someone else came back later to confront him. They ended up running him over twice, killing him. His nephew came out just in time to watch the tires go over his head. He was such a cool guy. I always enjoyed playing and talking with him. R.I.P. Pepper, miss you man. About 6 months ago I was with my mom on the phone to my grandma who was dying from COVID pneumonia. Mom said to her I love you. She replied I love you too. Her words were barely audible over the phone with her breath so labored. Grandma, who I was very close to, didn't know I was also on that call to her. I couldn't bring myself to tell her I also loved her because I knew I would have broken down and burst into tears as soon as I opened my mouth to speak. I wanted to tell her so much. I was desperate to, but just couldn't. She died an hour or so later. I love you too were the last words I heard her say. But I still feel a horrible sadness and regret that I didn't tell her I loved her while I had an opportunity in her final moments. She was such a lovely part of my life and I'll never stop missing her. My father was mostly nonverbal and not lucid while declining from cancer. I was sitting bedside when he suddenly woke up and started getting out of bed. "Where are you going, Dad?" I asked. He looked at me, his eyes twinkling above a huge smile, and said, "I'm going to get some ice cream." Boy, Ed, there was no way he could support himself at that point, so I got him back in bed, then ran to get ice cream. He was lapsing back when I returned, but he did have some ice cream. I'm pretty sure those were his last words to the world. Edit 2. Many thanks for the responses and awards. It is cathartic to share this memory with you. I like to think my father would have appreciated the humor of the moment as well. This entire thread has been a roller coaster of emotion. The mix of slow fades and unexpected departures remind us that no one knows when the aunt will arrive, but that someone will remember our last words to them. My father calling me and wishing me a happy birthday 2 weeks before he passed away, 2 days before I flew home, 2 months ago. Ed, reading all these posts and comments is literally bringing me to tears. So many heartfelt stories. This is why you should always be kind to other people, you never know what they are going through. Come here, my granddad wanting to tell me something before I went to work. I said he'll see you when I finished TA. He died while I was at work. Kills me inside knowing he wanted to tell me something before he died. Edit spelling and thank you so much of the upvotes. Didn't think it would blow up like that, haha. Don't stop writing. My dad, brother and I were heavily into mountain biking. My dad found a group through his work that rode their bicycles in a group on the weekend. I was a teenager at the time, but I became friends with an older lady named Joyce. On a road ride one morning, all the slower people, me, my dad, Joyce and a few others, were drafting off Ecother. When it was my turn, I accidentally clipped Joyce's handlebar and she went down hard. Now it was a nasty fall, but it wasn't bad enough to cause anything serious. Her protective gear should have saved her, but she was down. She was in a lot of pain and couldn't move without crying. We ended up having to call an ambulance. 14-year-old me was distraught that I hurt her so bad. A week or two later we get a call. Joyce had advanced stage cancer and the unexplained extreme pain from the fall was related to it. and that was how the doctors discovered it. I'll cut this short, the meds didn't work, and she was told she had less than 6 months. When it was our turn to visit her, she let me know that she doesn't blame me for what happened, and that I shouldn't let this stop me from writing. Don't stop writing. Thank you for taking such good care of me. You did a wonderful job. My mother, after a stupid accident, caused her to die a little prematurely while she was terminally ill with pancreatic cancer. I was her primary caregiver for the last 7 months of her life. We knew she wouldn't wake up in the morning. It'll be 5 years on June 3rd. Still hard to think about. Not sure if this counts, but a friend from university who was in Denmark, I'm in the UK, sent me one of those multimedia messages. I assume it was because it was a really long message, but I messaged him back, thinking maybe it was just a picture at the time, and said you should get WhatsApp my guy. I can't see what you've sent me. I didn't get a response, and found out a week later that he had killed himself. I was never able to convert the message after, and I have no idea what he wanted to say. I still think about it from time to time, but I try not to linger on the memory now. It feels too heavy. Before my husband completed suicide, he jumped up out of bed and said, "I'm just so rattled, I'm going to go call my friend." Found him passed about 2.5 hours later. I talked to his friend and found out he didn't actually call him that night, so I think he just said that to keep me from following him. It was late and we both had to work in the morning, but this particular friend was someone he talked to when he was having problems with his PTSD. Where is my other beauty? My grandmother asking for my sister right before she slipped away. She was so high on morphine for the last 2 days of her life to deal with the pain of her cancer. She had only brief moments of lucidity, and it will always haunt me that I told her my sister was still asleep instead of getting her, so she could see her one last time. My ex used to give a work colleague a lift to and from work. We were about to have time off for a holiday. On the last day before we left, the work colleague said goodbye and thank you. After our holiday, we called in to see him to check for future travel arrangements to find out that he had died while we were away. Didn't say anything, but I got a thumbs up. A friend of mine's brain cancer came back. He didn't want people seeing him too much because of what the chemo was doing to him. After he was hospitalized, I arranged to go visit him. He was completely out of it when I got there, but I had a nice conversation with his wife about all the arrangements they were making so they could bring him home the next week. I was going to leave, but his wife woke him up so he knew I was there. He was too out of it to talk, but I got a thumbs up. I went home and started talking to my friends about putting together some kind of welcome home care package. I got a call the next weekend to say he had passed. That was about 5 years ago. I still have the care package. I don't know what to do with it. My grandpa and I didn't have an exactly good relationship. We didn't talk for 3 years. He was a very arrogant person, but the day before he died, he called me and told me how much he misses me and wanted me to visit him. So, I decided to visit him. As I was getting ready to visit him the next day, when I got a call telling that he died, that day, I cried a lot. I wished I had visited him before. Sorry if there are any errors, cause English is not my first language. I'm alright. Can you put your mother on the phone? My grandfather was at the doctor's to check on a chest infection, and they had just told him he needed to go into hospital. He was asking my mom if she could pick his car up for him. I remember passing the phone to her thinking that he sounded a bit more congested than usual, but shrugged it off. He passed away in the hospital a week later. He gave specific instructions me and my sisters weren't to visit him. He knew his time was up and didn't want us to see him the way he was. I told my mom right before they administered morphine to her, they are going to give you some medicine and then you can go see daddy. Her response was good. I'm ready. My father was non-verbal when he passed a year earlier due to stroke. It was nice to say goodbye to Mom and she was leaving this world on her terms. It helped me accept her passing.